I don't think there's a formula. I don't think everybody can find that why, but it's got to be deep and it's got to be emotional because it is so challenging to leave those golden handcuffs and to overcome this and to do all the steps.
Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. The freedom that exists in that mindset is understanding that if you don't like the outcome you're currently dealing with, all we have to do is tweak the system. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you're dealing with some kind of constraint in your medical practice, obstacles that are in the way of you achieving your dreams and your goals that can look or feel like burnout, maybe hitting a business plateau, dealing with employee drama, and other things. And you've decided you want to make a change. If that's you, go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals using our free diagnostic. And today, I'm really excited because we have a special guest on the podcast. And I just love bringing in outside perspective. And on the podcast today, we have Dr. Joe Pazona, urologist and CEO of Pazona MD and Virtue Care, based out of Nashville. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed. I'm really honored to be here today and excited to share my experiences.
Absolutely. Now, I know what I love about your story is you were dealing with something. You felt like it should be a different way. You took steps to make that happen. And I know that you speak pretty openly about your why. Can you just let the audience get an understanding of where you're coming from?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think in healthcare, there are plenty of ills with our system, and probably a lot of you are disgruntled with where you are. And I certainly felt that way as well. But I felt hopeless. I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I didn't have any options. And, for me, it took some pretty major life events to say, I've got to make a change. And so, my background is grew up in a lower middle class family. Didn't come from much, or I'm the only physician. I was fortunate enough to get into a medical program at Northwestern, and so I said, well, I guess I'm going to be a doctor, and went off naively down my educational path. And 13 years later, you finish and you realize you know how to practice medicine, but you don't know anything about the business side of things. So my mindset at that time was very fixed. I said, well, I don't want to think about all the non-clinical aspects. Let me let someone else worry about it. And so I took a job with a multi-specialty clinic, and it was great. I got to, get some bumps and bruises, which happen earlier in your career, where you really start learning, and you realize that in those 13 years, I didn't learn anything. And luckily, I had the support of great partners in an organization. But then you start, especially as a physician, we want to be in control of things. We're used to things going perfectly. I mean, you don't get into medical school and top residencies if you're not top of your class. And so when things don't go perfectly, it's very alarming and it's hard to deal with. And so I think that started the journey of realizing, there's a bit of a price you pay when you give up that control and you're part of an organization. And
Yeah, and you can find yourself in a place where you're dealing with the day-to-day kind of head down because you've decided, right, that there's other people that are going to handle these things, and you can go pretty long without realizing how much is actually out of your control.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 8 years, and I don't. I'm so grateful for that experience, and it was overall a very positive one. But I'm not a complacent person, and I bet some of you out there feel similarly. I was 8 years into my career, and I kind of asked myself, "Is this it? Like this? You work this hard, and now we're just coasting?" Because I just felt like other people around me weren't as interested in advancing what we were doing. Healthcare, they teach us, half of what you learn today in 10 years is going to be wrong, but you don't know what half. And so here I was almost at that 10-year mark and going, guys, we've got to try these other things. We've got to improve this experience for our patients. And no one else seemed interested. I just was kind of, said, oh, just be quiet and work. You got a great life here. And so I started looking for other jobs, and I was naive enough to get hooked by one of those recruiter emails that I think a lot of physicians get. The dream job on paper appeared in my inbox one day, Zed, and I said, "Oh, this can't be true." And it's as if they wrote the post for Joe Pazona. I mean, it was start a brand new urology department that you lead in your vision, recruit your team. I mean, all these words that struck a chord with who I was. And I said, yes, let's do this. And I certainly didn't jump in impetuously. I did as much due diligence as I could and research, and ultimately took the chance. And sadly, it just wasn't the reality. All those promises were not what it was meant to be. And if your listeners are gonna get a theme again, not only am I not complacent, I don't take direction very well, and so being told to sit quietly in your corner was just not an option, especially when I had moved my family cross country, and I was promised to be able to build something in my vision, and it just wasn't the case. And so, you almost felt a sense of betrayal from the system, that you recruited me because of my experience in taking care of patients and building something, but yet you don't want to help me execute that or give me that ability. And so that's when I think my mindset started shifting of, maybe I do have to do something differently here.
And so at that point, something differently might have felt pretty big in the sense of what that actually meant for you. And I'm pretty sure that people listening would be curious of what did it take for you to decide what that differently was going to be? And then what did it take for you to actually take those steps that can feel so risky to people?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly transparent, Zed, I got fired. I was let go, and I speak about this openly. And I look at it as probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest moment in my life professionally. But what a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a place that wasn't the right fit, and I was scared. I felt like I was running my head against the wall and nothing was changing. And so they made that decision for me. And as a father of three kids, as their main support, I didn't have any options. Here I was in a place where I was an outsider, was a place that we could say is challenging to start a practice. I knew I had to go elsewhere. And so I was forced into it. And I think for a lot of you, until your back is against the wall or you've really hit that low, you may not know what you're capable of. But for me, my why started with my family, because I didn't have any other choice. I was not going to be an absent father. I was not going to not provide for my kids. And so I said, all right, well, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You've got to do something here. And so I then, I literally got out a notepad and I wrote a list, and I said, this is what my ideal job looks like. And this is my ideal environment, but not only for me, but for my family. And I drew a 4-hour circle around where I was and said, all right, well, if as a worst case scenario, I have to be apart from my kids for a bit, at least I can make a drive home on a Friday evening. Let's go find the best place for everybody. And that's how I ended up in Nashville about 5 years ago. I felt like there's a lot of opportunity here. And I just had to, Zed, let go of a lot of these assumptions of what you're capable of and what you're not capable of, and had to just get resourceful and gritty and all those great adjectives we hear self-starters talk about, again, because I had that why of I've got to do this for my family. But also personally, I felt like I owed it to myself and my future patients, and I owed it to colleagues, because here I was. I tried two different systems. I had tried being an employee, and even in ones in which it seemingly on the surface sounds great, may not be the right fit, and didn't give me that level of control and ability to really dictate what my professional life looked like, to dictate how the patient experience was going to be, and really take control of my situation and not let these external factors dictate where I was headed.
You know, from prior discussions that you and I have had, I've always been impressed by what you've accomplished within your practice from a business system. And I say business, I feel like sometimes I have to clarify. I'm going to always assume that physicians are doing the best clinically for the patients, and a successful or healthy business is what allows you to treat more patients and bring a better experience to them. So it's okay to be good at business. How did you make that leap from focusing all of your schooling into being a physician, being employed, and then being in a new position where you have to create your own thing? How did you make that leap into creating a business system that's actually built it's good, unfortunately, private medical practices, sometimes mediocrity in the system pays well enough so people don't fix it. And you've gone beyond that, and you've actually created a great place for people to work, a great place for patients to be treated. How did you make that leap?
I think there are two aspects to it, and I'll start at the 30,000-foot view, what some might label in the business world more of the strategy, and then I'll kind of talk about some of the tactics. From the strategy perspective, again, it starts with your why. It's really hard to learn something new in your 40s. It's really hard to have the humility to say, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. Especially as a physician, where we're subject matter experts and have gone through so much schooling. And I had this fixed mindset of, well, I don't know business. I don't have an MBA. I don't do this. And so it started with adopting more of that growth mindset of getting really curious and not having these limited belief systems that say, I can't, or I won't, or I don't know how, and instead go, how do I learn this? And then take it to the next level of business, which is, who can do this for me? Realizing that as a physician, we're taught to do everything, right? We're taught to take all that control. It's what the system breeds, is you've got to do everything and you're supposed to say yes. But yet in business, Zed, you know this as well as anyone, some of the most successful business leaders are excellent at saying no and delegating. And that's a whole new skill set. So I think that's the first thing you've got to do is eliminate your assumptions and understand that although these things are difficult, they're not complex. Business concepts, for the most part, are not cardiopulmonary physiology. This is simple stuff. It's simple stuff, right? But it's boring, and you have the key to make it successful is to execute it consistently and to let go of all your biases. I know how you love talking about biases and heuristics, and boy, us physicians are filled with them. So I think that's step number one. In terms of a tactical perspective, again, I tried to put ego aside, have that curiosity, and I just started consuming every piece of content that I could, to the point where my wife would jokingly say, oh, I see the Amazon delivery guy was here again today, and another 10 books are here. And so, how do you run a full practice? Because yes, I still had to deliver clinical care. It's not like I could step back and be in a startup and go, all right, we're going to work on this business concept for 2 years. I mean, I had to pay bills. I had to start seeing patients. So that means using the best of your time. And when you have that strong why, it gets you through those tough days. But I was also reinvigorated. It was exciting to see the possibility, because I now had a blank slate. I wasn't part of a system that put these limits or these bureaucracies or these obstacles in front of me. I could go and create whatever I wanted. But it also took me then learning that I can do anything, but not everything. And so I then had to really start narrowing down. And so I started with some foundational things, lots of books on marketing and leadership and, just general business structure. And still to this day, I'm just an avid reader, consumer of great podcasts like yours, Zed, that I think provide such a value to physician entrepreneurs. And then trying to just surround myself around people a lot smarter than me. I think that's another key aspect I've realized is it does take a team. And so I've had to go find someone who's really outstanding at operations, because often visionaries and big idea people aren't really great at executing because we get a little bit scattered. And so I need someone who can check me and do that. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't, again, think about why I'm doing this, if I didn't remove my fixed mindset, if I didn't open myself up to curiosity, and then just start consuming. And so now I get jazzed when I learn a new business concept, or I listen to your podcast and I go, oh, that is good. I'm going to take that and run with it today. And the beauty is when you have your own practice, again, there's no barrier. You can make whatever choice you want. The difference is you got to look yourself in the mirror every day and understand that all of your actions have real life consequences. Because I think a lot of people listening who are part of organizations, and I was there, you start complaining, knowing that they may be listening, but they're probably not. They're just ignoring you, and nothing's going to change. Well, if you don't like the system you've created, then fix it, and you have the complete control. And so the buck really stops with you. And that's both challenging, but also exciting to me.
Yeah, I love that. The power really is in it. It is within us to decide how we want things to be. And a lot of times we give up that power by being reactive, by saying it's their fault, or by complaining. And look, you're not a bad person if you say those things and complain. The value is awareness. Just call yourself on it a little bit and then say, okay, how could I look at this differently? And the power of why is huge, but let's pretend that someone listening doesn't get that. They haven't been presented that concept very well, or they think maybe it's squishy. How did you determine what your why was? What happened for you to really know what your true deep, it's going to get you over any obstacle why?
Yeah, I think that it first and foremost, it's something that's organic and can change. I think all of us want to do well by the people who we love and love us and depend on us. And I think for any parent out there, you can certainly look at your children, or for anyone in a relationship can look at your partner and say, I want to do right by them. But let's say you're in a situation that was different than mine. Again, my low point was my blessing. Getting fired was what I needed to put this charge in, because it really didn't leave me in my mind with any options.
Right.
So let's say that you do have options. You have those golden handcuffs, right? You've got that. You have no reason to leave your organization other than you might just be burnt out, morally injured, and miserable. But because you're a physician, you put others' interests ahead of yours. And maybe you don't want to take that risk because you look at the risk of, well, my family does depend upon me and I do have a paycheck. How could you ask me to leave that? And so I think what I would challenge some listeners to think about are two different scenarios. The first is, I think we often underestimate the risk of staying and overestimate the risk of leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And we're risk averse as physicians. The first part of the Hippocratic Oath is, at first, do no harm. It's not go do surgery to a patient or prescribe them medicine. It's first we have to do no harm. And so that's ingrained in our psyche. And so we look at change and we look at outside situations as scary. Well, what if instead I say that staying is actually the scarier option? What if you now take this a step forward and do part two of this thought experiment, and imagine yourself at 80, 90, 100 years old, sitting in a rocking chair on a porch with your loved one, watching grandkids or great grandkids run around. and you realize how miserable your professional life was. And you look back upon your life with regret. And I think this is something even, Jeff Bezos talked about when he was thinking about leaving and starting Amazon. Was he just asked himself that simple question: would I look back upon this with regret if I didn't right now go jump on this opportunity for this crazy new thing called the internet and start selling books? Would I regret it? And he said at that moment, it made the decision really easy. And I think if most physicians are honest with themselves, they would feel the exact same way, because they feel like they're part of a broken system, one in which they don't have their autonomy to make any changes here. And you know what the good news is? You're a physician and there's a shortage of us. There will still be the same crappy job available if you leave
Yeah.
and your venture doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't recommend this for everybody. I'm not saying everyone should go out and start their own practice. And for better or for worse, the amount of inertia you've got to overcome. I hope I jazz up a lot of you listening, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go do this. The sad thing is, probably less than 5% of you are going to take any action to go do it. And the reason is because that why is not strong enough. So I think that that when the why is right, that inertia is overcome, and that's how it's got to come out, Zed. I don't think there's a formula. I don't think everybody can find that why, but it's got to be deep and it's got to be emotional, because it is so challenging to leave those golden handcuffs and to overcome this and to do all the steps, because I'm romanticizing what I'm doing and you're romanticizing my practice. It's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really
Right.
hard. I mean, I jokingly love when people say like, "Oh, have a great weekend off," and I go, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I think about the business and our team and our patients and all the worries of just even being a clinician, from when am I going to get sued next and when's an attorney going to reach out to me. All of this is constant, and it doesn't get any easier when you start your own practice. So but I know we're doing something special, and I know that for me and for my family, and now being on the other side of that and watching my children live vicariously through me. I'm not living through them, they're living through me, and they're sharing the journey with me and taking little parts of it. um, I'm having the most fun in my life, even though I'm paying myself the least amount of money I've ever made, and
Right.
I wouldn't change it for a thing.
Well, you covered a lot of really important topics there. And, what happened to you is you were put on a burning platform. And this concept of a burning platform is, if you imagine you're in the center of the ocean and you really should jump into the ocean, easiest way is set the platform on fire, right? Because then you're going to leave. Sometimes it happens for us. Sometimes we need to identify that we need to light the platform on fire. And the concept of why is really what helps you understand that there's more beyond that platform that you're stuck on. And Stephen Covey, he wrote a book a while ago about called 7 Habits. And this exercise that he walks you through in the book is so powerful. And it's kind of tied to what you brought up about regret. And the exercise is, picture your funeral. And it's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing. You've lived a long life, and 3 different people walk up and talk about you. And it's your significant other or a very close loved one, it's your children, and it's close friends. And now, what do you want them to say? And if you write this stuff down, if you had a hard time identifying your why, you will start to see it evolve out of what you want people to talk about you when you're gone. And there's so much power in this, because there's a couple things that can happen. You'll write some things down, you go, you know what? They would say that today. You'll write some other things down and you go, eesh, they may not say this yet, which is awesome, because now you've identified which direction you want to shift. And the value of putting that deep why out in the future is now it gives you a destination. And I say destination with some caution, because I'm not a big destination guy. I'm really all about enjoying the journey. The thing is, a journey is partially because you're going somewhere. And so if you know where you are and you know what your why is, that means you have a path. It may weave and zigzag and be harder some days and easier the others, but that's what makes you be able to say that you're having more fun now than you ever did, because you have that why out in the future. You're marching towards it. Some days are harder than others, but that the fulfillment that someone can get from doing that is so powerful. And like my why for starting this business is, I don't want people to believe that they have to live the way they're living. Now they can love the way they're living, and that's great, but you don't have to live that way. You can create whatever it is. And I use that internally as I talk about that with our team. I want all of our team members to understand that you can work in a positive environment. You can go home excited to go home, but also come to work excited to come to work. The patients that we help find out about solutions, that patient, I'm sure you've dealt with many patients that didn't realize they had to suffer as long as they did. And that just drives me nuts. And then physician business owners that feel like they're stuck, or that they just have to grind day after day, and they look straight down and they're waiting for the day to end, and they know they got to grind harder the next day, and they're not marching towards that why. And so maybe walk through that exercise, pick up the book. It's such a good way to kind of hit reset on your North Star to help you define what path you may want to go on.
Zed, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that I think more succinctly stated what I was attempting to state, in that you have to have that North Star, that guiding light. And it doesn't mean that the path is crystal clear. In fact, if it is, I'd caution you.
Yeah, right.
Because you know what?
Goes
Something's
back to
going to
that
jump.
email.
Yeah, something's going to come up in that path that now all of a sudden you do have to zigzag around it. And now what? How do you get back in alignment? And I think there's some power to writing things down 100%. I don't think it's a mistake that what I wrote down crystallized with where I ended up here in Nashville, and the core principles of our practice and our core values. I mean, all those things were written down, and that brings to light that these things are possible. And so I love that you shared your why as well. And it sounds like we have a lot of alignment there. And I think, you bring up an excellent point that we haven't touched yet, but probably one of the most rewarding parts, if not the most rewarding part of running the practice, is that we have created that healthcare team and environment that other people are excited about. I bet if you went behind my back and interviewed most of our team members, they'd be really excited to talk to you about Pazona MD and Virtue Care and say they don't want to work anywhere else. And that's nothing more than me getting really intentional about what we stand for and what we don't stand for. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Yes, it's great to have a job that gives you purpose, and we're both headed down our paths and we're excited about it. But it's sure a heck of a lot more fun to see the excitement of other people who've worked elsewhere and go, "Oh my God, this place is great." And I realize that if we take great care of our team, then they're going to deliver an exceptional experience for our patients, because burnout is rampant in healthcare. I'm sure many of you listening to this feel very burnt out. And I hope you leave today knowing that there's hope, whether that means you creating that situation yourself, or finding an organization like ours. And we're not the only ones out there. I know a lot of wonderful physician entrepreneurs out there who are doing incredible things throughout the country. And I think this is how we improve this broken system, is that enough of us just get fed up and either start or join these teams that put the healthcare team first, and then double down on it and put in the systems and the processes to make those people successful. Because I don't think there's bad people in healthcare. There's bad systems, and a bad system will take a great person and burn them out. And I'm sure I was a miserable person to work around several years ago. In fact, I know I was. Was I a bad person then and I'm a good person now? No, it was a bad system. And so there certainly are some immoral characters in every field. But I do believe most of us in healthcare went in for a pretty good reason, but the system has beaten it out of us. And so I hope that people leave today and do one of the exercises you or I suggested. Because I think if you do, that's gonna be pretty powerful, and you're gonna realize like, do I want my kids at the funeral say, yeah, mom and dad were great, but they sure hated work. They seemed pretty miserable. I sure didn't want to go into medicine after watching what they did. Is that what we really want for our kids and for our loved ones? And I know I'm a better parent today than when I was at my low point, when I was burnt out, because I had no energy. I didn't have any. My emotional bandwidth was nil. I was just trying to hang on. And I'm sure there's some of you out there who it may not be outward, or you may not be honest with yourself, but you're probably just trying to hang on every day and go to work. And that's not what healthcare should be about. And that's not what you deserve after all the years of training that you went through and the sacrifices that all of us physicians go through. How awful is it that we're arguably the most burnt out profession in the entire country, but yet I think, selfishly, we have the highest calling. I mean, what is more important than the health of humanity and our fellow citizens? But yet look what we're doing to physicians. But it starts with individuals. And so again, my ask of the audience is to just do these exercises. Even if you don't feel like you're there yet, I think you might be surprised as to what your true feelings are, because we need more of you out there, because the system is broken. But I do believe that with more physician entrepreneurs, and what you're doing here, Zed, with this podcast, is an invaluable resource and tool to start making positive changes for all of us and for our patients.
And just the idea that it's possible, even something you just mentioned, I guarantee you someone listening said, well, that sounds great that you have this team, but in my market, it's really hard to hire. Or for me to get someone like that, it costs too much money. And this is where this idea is, if you're experiencing that today, you're experiencing the perfect outcome of your current system. And in any city in the country, you can hire amazing people. You can do so at a rate that makes sense for your business, but you talked about it, it's being intentional. And all this stuff comes together. None of this is in a vacuum, right? There's no magic like, hire the right person and then I can leave it on cruise control. And, or it's, okay, I have to have my why, and then I can leave it on cruise control. All this stuff works together. And I really love your call out of the audience. And um, I agree. I want people to realize that if you are good where you are, that is awesome. If you feel like something is missing, or you're saying to yourself, is this it? It's not it. Just find it. Go through the exercises. Joe, I really appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us today. I imagine we'll have some revisiting episodes coming up into the future. If someone is intrigued by the things you're saying, and maybe they don't know how to get themselves to take that step, do you mind if they reach out to you through LinkedIn?
No, not at all. Please, I've got people reaching out to me all the time. I am, I feel a fiduciary responsibility to pay back. I got here because of other people, and I'm still learning and still trying to learn from others. So selfishly, please reach out so I can learn from you. But more importantly, I'd love to give back. And so I had an hour-long phone call with a doctor over this weekend who I've never met, but I could tell he was interested in learning how to grow his urology practice, wanted to pick my brain. And I love stuff like that. I love to be able to help out with people. And so shoot me a message, and let's chat and check out some of my content. We get to some pretty heated and passionate discussions about all things healthcare and physician wellness. And so again, I'm just Zed, I'm very honored that you found me and chose for me to spend some time with you today. I love what you're doing, and it would be fantastic to come back on whenever you wanted me to have me again.
Absolutely. And it's for the audience, it's okay to think about goals, think about dreams. What do you want it to be? And if you feel like there are obstacles One of the tools that you can use is the Physician Growth Accelerator website. If you go to that website and click on vitals, you can actually do a quick assessment. I think it's 15 questions. There's only yes or no as options, so it might take you 45 seconds, and it'll start giving you the information to identify where are these constraints in your practice. Joe, thank you again so much, and we'll see you guys again on the Physician Growth Accelerator.